Hello, everyone. Oh, man. I'm kind of sad that I think that's the last time we're going to have to stay up till 1 in the morning to watch a game this year. I mean, it's my excuse to get out of taking the kids to school in the morning. Like if I say I had to stay up late for a game, I'm able to not get up at 6:30 in the morning and take the kids to school. My wife will do it, which is nice. That's, she does it most of the time, to be honest, like probably 80% of the time. But I can get out of it. I can get out of it really easily with late West Coast games. So I'm kind of upset that ends today.
We'll miss you, West Coast.
Yeah, here's an. Well, no, I mean,
we're not going to have 10:30 games. I mean, they're not going to start the conference finals at 10:30 at night.
Probably 9:30.
It's going to be a 9 o'clock game, 6 o'clock game out there, which is really a pain in the ass for.
Oh yeah.
But there is something, and people talk about that because I know my wife used to work till 6 o'clock out there all the time when she lived in California. But there are a lot of people in California who do work an earlier shift, kind of to be on more on the East Coast schedule. So a lot of people do get out of work at like 4 or so in California. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but 6 o'clock is still pretty early.
Yeah.
It is.
Russ, you wanted to bring up your debate with a fine establishment in the Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yes, a place called Lehigh Valley Pizza.
Oh.
So they went on. Actually, it's Lehigh Pizza. Okay. So last night they debuted their s'mores pizza. And everybody knows what's in a s'mores, so I don't have to go along with that again. All I put was not a pizza. And then this started an avalanche of, well, what are you talking about? It's a pizza. It's on a crust. And, and so I pointed out that in like 1522, tomatoes were brought over to Europe to make pizza, to make the first pizza. And so I basically said tomatoes were chosen over chocolate. And that started another argument, and they eventually.
And Lehigh Pizza has cut off Roscoe.
Wow, we're being hacked by Lehigh Valley Pizza. Unbelievable.
That's good. Well,
am I out of whack? Do I look like I'm totally messed up as far as internet goes? No, I'm okay.
No, you're okay.
On my side of things, I look like delayed, big time, which I hate.
No, it's fine.
As long as it looks okay to you.
Yep. That's all that matters.
Only you, Mike. Just you. I don't care if anyone else has a problem.
That's all that matters is what I see.
Before the show, Mike, my goal is to remove one problem that you have in your life at a time. I'm doing that. All right, here we go.
Just to continue this until Russ gets back, being the Italian on the panel.
Yes, definitely.
There has been a broadening
hockey with an Italian man, an Irish man, and a Jew. That's what
there you go. There's been a broadening definition of pizza over the last 20 to 30 years, I think. I think white pizza without tomato sauce is acceptable. Even now in the Buffalo area and all around the country, the Buffalo chicken pizza, which has blue cheese as the sauce over tomato, that's acceptable. But when you start getting into breakfast pizzas and dessert pizza, they're not pizzas. I mean, the only thing that's pizza is that they use the same damn dough. Big friggin' deal. It's not a pizza.
All right, I want to know the difference between a flatbread and a pizza, okay? Because that's been the new thing that when I go to restaurants now with my wife, wherever we go, there's flatbreads, and we're not talking like matzo flatbreads. We're talking like just flatbread. And basically they are also, as far as I can tell, thin crust pizza. The difference between thin crust pizza and flatbread is almost impossible to distinguish.
Flatbread is basically somebody who's too lazy to actually spread out the dough on a pizza dough and just wants to pour sauce on something and throw it in the oven. That's what flatbread is. But Russ, while Lehigh Pizza had interrupted your internet, they hijacked your internet. I was saying that blue cheese is acceptable as a sauce on buffalo chicken pizza. White pizzas are acceptable. But when you get into breakfast pizza and you're putting on sausage and eggs and bacon and you're talking about s'mores pizza, it's not a pizza. It's a dessert pie, or it's whatever. But it's just because it has a crust and uses pizza dough, it's not a frickin' pizza.
Right, and they tried to say, well, we advertised it as a dessert pizza, and they weren't getting the point. Like, there is no such thing as a dessert pizza. Like I basically said, there was one point where I just said
there's dessert and breakfast pizza. This is what there are. Okay, the dessert pizza is pizza that has been left on the counter, and you find at 2 a.m.
yes.
And then breakfast pizza is that pizza like 6 hours later, on the counter still. That's and at least in our house, that's the deal.
Here was one of their comebacks. They said everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but the only person being hurt by this closed-mindedness is Russ Cohen. And I was like, wait a minute. I didn't tell people not to eat it.
Oh.
I'm just telling people this isn't a pizza.
Wow, this is crazy. This is good. I've got to get into my
Have a knockdown drag out between Russ Cohen and Lehigh Pizza.
I was gonna go on a whole Twitter rant this morning, but that's this okay. No, because man, we'll do that. My Twitter rant tomorrow, though. All right, because I had a friend who nailed it, who compared Twitter exactly the way it's like to the way rhinos, the way rhinoceroses mark their territory by creating piles of their dung neatly. Okay, I'm gonna do this real fast. This is awesome. This is an awesome comparison to Twitter. Okay, rhinos.
Oh, it sounds wonderful.
Rhinos in the wild. Okay, compare. They have these proud piles of dung that they build in their area to basically say this is my area, and they can go 6-7 feet tall. When a jerk rhino comes into the area and wants to like disrupt everything, that rhino will then go and just knock over that rhino's dung and be like, "Ah, you see, I screwed up your dung." And it occurred to me as he was saying this to me, you know, we just came upon the same thing at the same time, that this is a perfect analogy for Twitter.
Yeah.
That, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people you tweet something out, people come in and they just destroy it, and at the end of the day, what did they do? They just knocked over your dung. That's all they have. They have a big pile of dung that they can call their own, and that's I love that analogy for Twitter. I think it's fantastic. Just throwing that out there.
I like it, and just again, it's just if I want dessert, I'll eat dessert, and like Mike even said, if something is a flatbread, I'm okay with you saying it's a flatbread. That's okay, but it's not pizza.
That's awesome.
That's all.
All right, let's get going, shall we? Here we go. It's Thursday.
That it is.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, May 11th, 2017.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. And you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And now we have 4. We have 4 teams left, and we have a new giant GM to talk about today, and we have a bunch of stuff on not work.
Sorry.
That sounds like someone just
someone drowned.
Reassess our
I'll look for new sound effects. Send your sound effects to Michael Lagello at HockeyBuzz.com.
That sounded like you were playing Yahtzee, like a thing of Yahtzee. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with Jason Botterill to get that out of the way really fast because we all knew that was coming. And now it has officially arrived. Obviously, it came when we thought it would come after the series between the Penguins and Capitals. So every time I say series, by the way, my phone thinks I'm saying Siri. It's crazy. Every time I say it, I can't say the word series. It just launches. Anyway. So sure it happens to other people out there too who are listening. So anyway, yes, this is official. Botterill's in. What do we think of this choice? I mean, we just can throw our 2 cents in real quick.
I think it's a good choice. I mean, he's been with Pittsburgh a long time. He made Scranton a very good team. He knows the ins and outs of doing that job. Will he be able to fend off potential meddling from an owner? I don't know, and that's gonna be the key.
Yeah. This is a unique situation in some ways, and we know Botterill can run. He did a great job in Scranton. I mean, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, or whatever you want to call them, are they are absolutely a force in the AHL. They always are, and they've been forced through a time when the Penguins have called up countless players of theirs, and lots of their players are now on the Penguins team that won the Stanley Cup and could be on their way to another Stanley Cup. So yes, he's a great GM, or at least a good judge of talent, and has done a good job evaluating things. But I don't know him well enough. I think probably you know him better than any of us, Russ. Because
I don't know. Actually, he's a guy that I don't even know.
Okay, so he's going to be another one of those GMs that no one knows.
Yeah, but you look at his record.
Hooray! Hooray! No one knows him, and we have no idea what he's thinking. That
but love him. That's it.
That helps so much, Russ.
But you look at his record, and I think it was 7 or 8 years in the with the Penguins, doing an apprenticeship. As you said, being the GM of Scranton Wilkesboro. I mean, he's only 40 years old, so he's one of that younger generation of general managers. Maybe will think more outside the box than somebody who's been a GM in another place before. But I think you have the key here, Ak and Russ. I just think that there has to be a buffer between him and Terry and Kim Pegula. Otherwise, it's Terry and Kim Pegula who are the general managers of the Buffalo Sabres, and that I don't think will work. You have to let if he's going to be a standalone general manager, you have to give him the authority and let him run the team. You cannot have ownership dipping in and meddling in hockey operations.
Well, here's the thing: like every ownership, they're going to say he has full autonomy.
Right.
Only time will tell us if that's the case or not.
Right, but I think, Russ, what I think is based on so far, the record of the Pegulas with the Bills and the Sabres, I can't trust them to not get involved. You have to have somebody who will be the buffer between them and then allows Botterill to operate the team. If it's just that direct connection, then it's possible that they'll allow him the free reign to do it. But I would bet on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's what we're looking at. And by the way, do you hate the Bandits? You never want to mention the Bandits. I think Mike Augello hates the Buffalo Bandits. That's just me. I just think
I've never seen the Buffalo Bandits. I don't smoke a pack and a half of cigarettes a day, so I'm not part of their fan base.
Oh, see, now why would you go there?
That's not cool.
I got to tell you, I forgot where I was eating.
Apologizes to the fans of the Bandits right now for
all 16 of them.
Comments of Hockey Buzz, the feelings of Hockey Buzz, or its owners or proprietors.
Yeah, this is the thing, Ek. I want to tell you, I was in like a hotel in Buffalo, and I went somewhere like a pizza place or no, actually, I was with Mike actually.
We went to a late night diner in suburban Cheektowaga. Suburban Buffalo.
and we saw like 4 to 6 fans at a table from the Bandits game, and 3 or 4 of them had Tavares jerseys on. So, Mike, I think you're being unfair about this.
And Russ, and if you looked up on their right arm, they had Nicorette patches. So.
All right, I tried.
I'm reading a great book. I'm reading an awesome book. Let me mention this just before we transition out of this wonderful subject. All right. And I want to do a little bit of a public service announcement real quick before we move on. So first of all, I'm reading this book, which is by Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry.
Oh, is he Mike Tyson's dad?
Those of you who know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is,
I know who he is.
I know you know who he is, Russ.
Is he the distributor of Tyson? Does he distribute Tyson chicken?
He's a national treasure. This guy, okay? He is one of the best out there, and he is phenomenal. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly is this net neutrality thing, because I think it's important to mention to anyone who loves the internet like you guys do. And
I live on the internet.
Yeah, and I think anyone who watches the show does, and anybody who listens to the show or goes to Hockey Buzz does, and it is at risk again, like right now, and there's a big issue, and this, the way net neutrality works, and Michael recluse himself or whatever they call it. Just kidding.
So Mike's on dial-up, so he walked away.
Yeah, as a Republican, he'll get out of here, but no. No, I'm not just kidding.
Wow. Sorry, somebody rang the doorbell in the house. I got to check.
It's not a Republican or Democratic issue at all. This is an issue for us on the internet. Okay, so it really is under risk again, and what that means basically, if you don't understand what net neutrality is, essentially it means that at this point in time, right now, your internet provider can't change the speeds of things coming to you. Like it can't be like suddenly they say, oh, we have shows that are better than Netflix, so we're going to make our streams better than the Netflix streams.
Right.
That kind of stuff. which I think everybody realizes would be completely wrong. And it basically,
and we're going to charge you more for it.
Right, or we're gonna charge you more for it. Or we're gonna slow you down, and there's so many issues that are wrong with that. There's so many conflicts of interest in this world. It's crazy. Well, last time a lot of people on the internet got together like they are this time, and we're I have some really big friends in high places on the internet who told me that they wanted me to get involved. So the best way to be heard on this is actually to go to the FCC website. And
no, I disagree.
No, I go ahead. What do you think is the best way?
Well, here's the thing. If you went to the FCC website, they put in like a bunch of blockers, so you'd have to go like 13 steps.
No, but I'm going to tell you how you get around that. And
well, John Oliver has a link.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
As long as you know that, that's good.
Yeah, I was continuing on. It's and I tweeted it out today as well. It's gofccyourself.com. Okay.
Right.
This is John Oliver set up a direct link. gofcyourself.com, which takes you to exactly where you need to go, because if you go to the FCC website, you have to know they've really made it incredibly difficult for the public to be heard on this.
Yes.
So gofcyourself.com. When you get there, you'll see something that's like easy or complicated. You'll see the case there. You just want to click on the easy, and you put your name down and be heard, because honestly, the stuff that we do on the internet and the stuff that you all love to do on the internet is seriously at risk. And if you don't think it is right now, you're kidding yourself. And if you don't think that this administration or any administration in the future might want to actually, do something to benefit these countries, these big companies like Verizon and Comcast who are trying to do this stuff, you're kidding yourself again. So
and I wanted to say one thing about this
yeah.
an argument, because this is an argument that I heard from a friend of mine.
Okay.
Well, I already pay $100 a month for internet, so I'm good for that.
No.
I'm good with this. But what he doesn't realize is, does your daughter's school pay that? Does your daughter's library pay that? There's so many different places that you are on the internet all the time that now, just as an example, if the school your kids go to don't pay this new ransom for the new internet, then they may not be able to, be educated the same way that they were before, because the internet's going to be slow and they may have to do away with certain projects.
And I don't believe for a second that paying $100 a month or whatever is going to make you okay for it.
No, it won't.
I mean, and anybody a lot of people who are younger out there might not understand this, but okay, when I was dating my wife in the late 90s, late 90s, okay,
Was that the 1890s?
Yes, mid to late 1890s. She was in California, I was here.
So he got on a horse and buggy and got it took him a year and a half to get to San Jose.
Yeah, Sacagawea took me across the country a bunch of times. But the way this worked was we communicated via the phone, and at that point in time, the phone companies charged you for long distance, a different way that people I think understand now long distances. Like now you pay a certain amount for unlimited long distance. At that point that you got charged by the minute for long distance, and if I could tell you that I probably could afford my kids' college right now if I hadn't made those calls, that would not be far off. I mean, we must have paid $300 to $400 a month.
Yeah.
To just keep up with each other at that time, and that was because it was being controlled by the minute. The internet is not like that right now. It could be like that if you're not careful. So that's all I can say. And it would, it's really important. And I think that I just want to get that out there. It's gofccyourself.com. I apologize if that's a little bit crude, but it's John Oliver's way of getting the message out there.
He paid a programmer to get through the muck. I give him credit.
You have to. And I gave him a huge credit, and it's just because the muck was obviously set up so you wouldn't be able to comment on it. Right. And I hate that kind of obstruction of democracy. So to me, this is a really good thing. And go for it. Go fccyourself.com. Check it out, please. Please. Don't just say, oh, I'll do that.
It doesn't matter what you are. It has nothing to do with what political side you're on. This is about just being a citizen of Earth.
Yes, and believing in like things like the American dream, and then the ability for small companies to rise up and be and matter, and if it's only Amazon and only the big companies doing things, prices will go up. Things less more expensive. So you need competition, and you need companies like HockeyBuzz who can be in there and compete with other companies like.
And maybe I can be. Here's more relatable, Eck.
Yeah. Just
imagine if this were to go through and this changed, all the people that have unplugged from the cable company, they're going to find a way to make you plug back in, or you're.
That's exactly what they want to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And so many people have unplugged for the cable company, and and this
is their way of trying to get you back.
Yes.
Forcing you back.
Cable companies and cell phone providers. Okay, so anyway, and this is also, it has to do with your cell phone too, so it's not just that. All right, we are getting out of here. We're going to stop talking this. I apologize, and I appreciate you giving us a second to talk about it and listening to it. And go fccyourself.com. Please do it. Tell other people about it. Okay, let's get on now. Game 7s. Whew. All right, so let's start with Pittsburgh, Washington. We talked a lot yesterday about this whole thing and how it was going to go down. And I was more interested last night in seeing who was right and wrong about how we talked than anything else, I felt like, as the thing went on. So in the Pittsburgh-Washington game, I think Russ and I went with Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Mike and Jan, who is not here because he went with Washington. I'm just kidding. No, Mike and Jan went with Washington. And, it was a 1-goal game, and
Right.
it could have gone either way. And then Russ, you pointed out very politely, as you always do when I'm wrong. You said that Fleury would come out and have be able to bounce back. And I said, I don't know. Sometimes Fleury doesn't bounce back. Well, Fleury definitely bounced back. You were totally right on that one.
I think it's an age factor, and I didn't want to say you were wrong, and that's why I did that on Twitter. I think it's only happened as he's gotten older. I think what you said was true earlier in his career.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember the Flyers series, right? So that was the crazy 8-7 Flyers series or whatever those games were. So, Mike, you went with Washington. What went wrong?
Well, it's the C word, and it's not.
Oh, God.
No. Let me finish.
No, the C word is not what you think. The C word is a joke.
Let me finish. It's not choke. It's core. It's the core group. It's the core group.
Good job.
It's the core group of the Washington Capitals.
Nice.
And this is the thing. I look at that organization and I look at what they did the last 2 years, and I bought into it. It wasn't okay. The team wasn't strong enough, so let's build around that core group of Backstrom, of Ovechkin, of Holtby, Carlson, and maybe one or two others, and let's add Oshie. Let's go for it and bring in Shattenkirk. Let's get Mr. Game 7 Justin Williams. Let's leave no doubt. We will surround this group with players that have won and players that can win and players that bring something. And in the end, the core, namely Ovechkin and maybe to a lesser extent Backstrom, let that team down. To my mind, and don't react to this too vociferously. Alex Ovechkin has put himself in the category of being the Russian Phil Kessel. And by that, what I mean is he's a great scorer. He's a great sniper. He is not a core player. The only way he ever wins a Stanley Cup is to be what Kessel is to Pittsburgh, a second-line, third-line complementary guy who can make matchup problems. And that's what Barry Trotz did in the latter part of the series. He couldn't put him on the number one line. He was not healthy enough, he may be injured, or he was not effective enough to play on that number one line. So he moved him down to an energy line with Lars Eller and Tom Wilson, and maybe there was a little bit of a spark there. But in Game 7, other than one opportunity, I didn't notice Alex Ovechkin. So it's gotten to the point now where he's making $9 million a year, and I think he still may have another 2 or 3 really, really good years, but Ted Leonsis and Brian McClellan have to start thinking about the future right now. And to me, I can't see bringing back this core group as is and expecting anything better than what has happened the last couple of years. I don't think they need to blow it up. I definitely think they need to shake up the core, and that's what I think they have to do this summer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I'll use the C word too. In the last 10 minutes, they did crumble. They did. And they were definitely tight. And we saw all kinds of Ovechkin with the play along the wall was probably the best example of that. And it started before that. But here's the thing. Forgetting about that, anything could happen in a short game. And Holtby played out of his mind. For people that want to say, hey, that one that went off his blocker is a soft goal. When a guy's shooting 100 miles an hour and you touch it with your blocker, that's not a soft goal. A soft goal is one that bleeds through your pads. Today's soft goal is different than what a soft goal used to be based on how the guys shoot. That's my opinion. But
there were no soft goals in that game.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Brian Rust, sorry, Mike, you should have picked him up. It's like the modern day Butch Goring. Like, this guy is a clutch goal scorer, and
Claude Lemieux.
You what?
A little bit of Claude Lemieux in him.
Yeah, a little bit of Claude Lemieux. He just scores in big moments, big games. That helps Pittsburgh a lot. But you know what helped Pittsburgh more? And I noticed this really in the third period, from the start of the third period. The Pittsburgh forecheck was insane. And it was insane from their forwards. It had nothing to do with their defensemen. The defensemen just played their game, but their forwards were stripping the puck before Washington could even get out of their zone at times. And Washington got tired. Ovechkin was tired by the end of that period. All of their players were tired at the end of the period. That's why they had nothing trying to score with the extra attacker on the ice. Yeah. That was a big plus for Pittsburgh. Washington needs to get some defensive forwards, more like Jay Beagle. They have to put more players like that in the lineup. You can't have all these skill guys, because at the end of the day, you can grind them out if you do it. And here's another thing. Give Jim Rutherford credit. The Ian Cole for Robert Bortuzzo's trade was an absolute steal. It was grand larceny. I mean, Cole was a star at Notre Dame. I didn't understand why St. Louis traded him, but I guess they were desperate, and they felt like he's not going to be an offensive defenseman, which is true. He's not an offensive defenseman, but he's a really good, smart, physical defenseman, and he played a great game.
And Justin Schultz for, I think it was a 4th-round draft pick with Edmonton.
That's another steal.
And the Ron Hainsey deal, who brings in a veteran guy at the deadline, and they needed him with Daly going down. I mean, the one thing that Pittsburgh has done, and, you know, there may have been doubters after they won the Cup and thinking it was a one-shot deal. But now advancing to the conference final, and, you know, I think they're going to be a dramatic favorite over the Ottawa Senators. You have to look at what that team has done in terms of bringing up quick but smaller players, the Jake Gunsels, the Connor Shearys. You know, Rust is a bigger player, but he's fast. I mean, they have a lot of speed up front. And for teams out there like, say, Chicago with like an Alex DeBrincat, a smaller, quick player, or Toronto, who has like guys like Brendan Leipzig and Kasperi Kapanen, you can bring guys who are 5'10" and 180 pounds into the NHL as long as they're fast, as long as they can make plays, and as long as they can forecheck. And that in Pittsburgh, with an average defense and an above-average forward core who can forecheck, you know, that works. Now they have to have superstar players like Crosby and Malkin to help along, but those players make a difference in the playoffs.
You want to know the changes I'd make on the cap sec? I'll tell you. Here's what I would do.
Okay.
I would bring up Verana. I would bring up Madison Bowie. I wouldn't sign Alsner. I wouldn't re-sign Oshie. I wouldn't worry about Shattenkirk, and I would trade John Carlson. And then I would pick up a couple of other players on the free agent market too, because John Carlson's not re-signing with them after next year. They might as well trade him and get something now.
Well, that's the one I don't agree with. I think he is re-signing with them. Why don't you think he's re-signing with them?
Because of this losing. I think he is going to be one of these guys, because he has been taking the brunt of it, a lot of this, because he's supposed to be a really good offensive defenseman, and he's not putting up huge points, and Barry Trotz's system is probably holding him back from putting up huge points. I mean, look, let's face it. Barry Trotz's system did not work for Kevin Shattenkirk either.
No, I mean,
let's get into that a little bit, okay? Because I'm going to throw a very different view of the Capitals than you guys are throwing out there, okay?
Okay.
I think the Capitals need to do nothing, all right? And I'm going to tell you why.
Oh.
And no, okay, just hear me out.
No, I want to hear it.
Just hear me out, okay? Sometimes there is a team that's the second best team in the NHL, right? And that second best team in the NHL, I mean, they've been the best team. They're the first team, okay, to win 3 President's Trophies and not win a Stanley Cup, I guess, or not get to the conference finals, I guess. Yeah, win 3 President's Trophies, not get to the conference finals. They're the first team in history to do that. That is a big error. That is a big problem with the way they play in the playoffs, okay? There's no question about that. You cannot move Alexander Ovechkin, okay? And you get for many, many reasons, all right? And beyond the fact that, you know, he's an icon. Every friggin' jersey in that arena is a number 8, Alexander Ovechkin. He is still performing. He is not necessarily, I mean, he you know, we don't know. What we don't know is this. How much of this like drop off Ovechkin to like 33 goals this year from 50 goals last year. But he had 69 points this year versus 71 points last year. So he put up 36 assists. this was in a lot of ways one of his most balanced seasons he put out there. 33, 36. He was a +6. You know, he still he still had a bunch of game-winning goals, I think. Yeah, he still had like 7 game-winning goals. All right, so but Ovechkin has shown, not just in Washington, you know, and I will sit there and tell you, Mike, that I hate the word choke. We talked about it last night. I said sometimes the team that loses doesn't choke. You know, Ovechkin does choke, and I'll throw that in my opinion. And I never use that word with players, but he does. If you want to use the term that he underperforms in pressure situations or seems to let it get to him, I think it's true with Ovechkin. Okay, I do, but you can't move him. Okay, you can't make that change. So beyond that, your team has been dominant in the NHL. Like absolutely crazy dominant. And yes, it can't beat the Penguins in the playoffs right now. But you know, anyone else, you know, if the Penguins somehow miraculously lose or, you know, to Columbus, the Capitals may have walked through this. Okay. It's like this, and to say that you're going to make massive changes or change your core or anything like that on a team that really is just being obstructed by one team right now.
Well,
okay, you can say the Rangers. Maybe the Rangers play them, but the Rangers don't have their act together right now either. So I'm not so sure the Rangers would have even beaten them right now.
Well, okay. First of all, some of the
7th game and within 1 goal of beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, who won the Stanley Cup last year and who are going to win the Stanley Cup again this year. And I think that everybody feels that way. So,
well, I mean, some of the changes are going to happen naturally. I mean, because Alzner's a UFA.
Sure.
You know, Shattenkirk's a UFA. So is Justin Williams.
He's not a part of their.
Yeah, so I think of those 4 guys, if one re-signs in Washington, it'll be a lot. I think Oshie's gone. I think maybe Justin Williams stays around, but I think
he might stay around. That's why I left his name.
Alzner's going to be the guy they're going to try to keep. Okay, because
right now what they might do, and the thing is the landscape. Carlson's a UFA after next year. Orlov is an RFA this year. But, I saw Bowie play last year, Russ, with Hershey in the AHL. I think he's an NHL ready defenseman.
He has 3 points in 5 games. He's going to bring the same level of offense that John Carlson does with a lot less money, and they're going to need to save money. That's
right. But I think one of the things that they might do is buy out Brooks Orpik to create
Well, they could do that anyhow, but
but you're still not. They're going to need to save money. But I mean, let's go. Like they've got Ovechkin and they've got Backstrom, 2 huge contracts, right?
Okay, but here's the thing.
But Chicago finds ways to get Seabrook and Keith in. I mean, why can't they get Carlson in?
Because there's no reason to. He had 4 points in 13 games in the playoffs. His points each season have been dropping. He's not physical. Bowie's physical. There's a reason. John Carlson is a one-dimensional.
John Carlson.
He's one-dimensional.
One-dimensional. Okay, that's fair. I mean,
and in this summer when Alzner is going to get $5.5 to $6 million possibly in free agency, and Shattenkirk's going to get $7. If you have John Carlson on the trade market, you're going to reap big rewards if they actually do that. But the one thing is they have to pay. They have to re-sign Orlov. They have to re-sign Kuznetsov, and you're talking $5+ million for Kuznetsov because he's. And that's my concern. They're going to be locking up these guys long term, like they've locked up Backstrom and Ovechkin long term. Right. And Ovechkin is at the precipice of being that complimentary guy. And the one difference between the Leafs traded Kessel to Pittsburgh, they took $1.8 million as a haircut off of that $8 million contract. So Kessel's making $6 million, which is a comparable salary for a complimentary player. If Washington keeps Ovechkin's making $9 million, and he's going to be a second liner in a year or 2. So that's what I'm saying.
You can't compare Kessel to Ovechkin. I mean, it's not. They're total. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but he's not a complimentary player. Okay. He
is in the playoffs. He rarely shows up.
No, he really is a complimentary player until he proves otherwise.
The guy has 1,000 points in 9.
But that's regular season. We're talking.
You can sit there and say that he doesn't perform in the playoffs, or and I think this is what I think was kind of we found out, and Washington found it out a little bit late. And someone brought this up to me, and they said, you know what? When they moved Ovechkin off the top line, he played better. Why did he play better? Because the guy does not love pressure. Okay, and I talked about this too. I talked about how I thought the slash at Crosby and all the attention that drew would be an issue, and I think it was. I think that he does not, and he's really hated the pressure when he's had the responsibility of the Team Russia on his shoulders. There's been so many situations where he hates pressure. The guy, and I like Ovechkin a lot. I am not ripping him personally. I think he's a great guy. I think he's an unbelievable.
Me too, but we're just talking about results here.
Yeah, he's the best scorer in our time. But and he's Mike Bossy in our era. But the fact of the matter is that in the playoffs, he isn't able to put that together, right? So
if Alex Ovechkin was the Mike Bossy of this era, they would have won at least one Stanley Cup. Mike Bossy showed up in the playoffs.
Oh, I know, and I'm saying, yeah, you're regular season Mike Bossy. But then again, but if you're going to sit there and talk about Phil Kessel was the leading scorer for the Pittsburgh Penguins last year in the playoffs. Okay, so that's totally
right. But he was a lead. And it has nothing to do with Ovechkin's skill or ability. It's the matchup situation. It's the fact that Kessel played on that third line with Bonino and Hagelin and provided a ridiculously difficult matchup for Tampa Bay in the conference final and for San Jose in the final. Whereas Ovechkin, until Game 5, was up with Backstrom and was going head to head with whoever the number one checking line is, either Malkin or whoever they wanted to put against him.
Right.
He was shut down. He did not produce. Now, he did more when he got moved to the third line, and the matchup was more favorable to Washington. That's the thing.
What I deem as the issue. Nobody's saying Ovechkin's a bad player. What we're saying is, in the playoffs, he does act like a complimentary player. He is not leading the team in goals. He's not leading the team every game. He is actually not. He was 7th in ice time. Heck, 7th.
Oh, I know, and that was
Mario. Well, hold on. Was Mario Lemieux ever 7th in ice time? No. Was Wayne Gretzky ever 7th in ice time on their team?
Listen, I am not. No. I mean, we know.
But the game's changed.
Yes.
He's like Pavel Bure, but the problem is Pavel Bure would have trouble surviving in this NHL having to play defense. He didn't have to play a lick of defense. Unfortunately, Ovechkin does, and you know what? He was either tired or lazy on that play along the wall and gave up an important goal as a result.
I would blame both goals on him, honestly. The first goal, he missed his coverage. He was behind whoever it was, Rust, who was Rust. It was Rust. He was right on Rust's tail when Rust takes that shot. That's a tough coverage to pick up, but Russ was quick and jumped in. Yeah. But I honestly think that I think Ovechkin's thing is completely mental. And I think, and for whatever it's, and Trotz has done the best he can.
Well, it might be, but I mean, that's like saying Greg Norman was that golfer that always lost down the stretch. He was a great golfer. And I know I'm bringing up golf, which is really out of my wheelhouse, but he was a great golfer in a tournament up until the last 2 holes and maybe the last 3 holes, and then he would not win the tournament most of the time.
All right, but the point that I'm trying to make, and we talked before, and you're right, it's a good comparison, and I'm going to sit there and I'm calling Ovechkin a choker, and I never call a guy a choker, but the reality is that he has shown in the key situations, I don't think teams choke as much as players choke, okay? So I think that he has definitely done it, okay? So now we look at this thing, and as we move forward, the key here is that you cannot move him, okay? He's on moving.
We're not moving him.
No, but so you got to get off that. Backstrom, okay, you can sit in Backstrom, had a rough playoffs too, but he had a hell of a year, and
I think Backstrom improved in these playoffs more in my eyes than Ovechkin did.
Yeah, and Backstrom, you can't move Backstrom, right? So,
but the one thing, and okay, the likelihood of this happening is probably about 2%, out of 100.
Right.
But they're immediately after this loss, listening to a couple of people, the post game analysis, there is some thought with the Olympic situation of Ovechkin going to the KHL for a year and playing in the Olympics and doing what Kovalchuk did, is basically voluntarily retiring from the NHL and going back to play in the KHL. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. But it just being mentioned.
Possible, and I mean, I agree with you, Mike. I mean, I wouldn't even put it at 2. I would give it 5, but I would give it 5%. But it's not. Because it's not completely impossible, just from the way Ovechkin, when you look at Ovechkin, the way he's responding to this stuff, he needs a change. And now is it possible that Ovechkin asks for a trade? I don't think that that's impossible. I would put that at maybe 25%. Still not likely, but would he go back to Russia? That's the other option, to play in the Olympics, maybe for a year. there's
All right, here's a good fact.
but the Olympics doesn't help Ovechkin either, because that's not where he thrives. Like, the whole situation is, if he goes back and takes a year off, imagine the pressure then. You take a year off, you go
Yeah, it'll be a lot of pressure. I agree with that. Here's a fact. Ovechkin in 97 playoff games has 90, or was it 94 playoff games, has 90 points. He's under a point a game in the playoffs. Malkin has 147 points in 136 playoff games. You could tell me that they play on different teams, different lines, different players, and I'll bring up a player like Marcel Dion, who no matter what was always scoring points.
But that difference
is unacceptable.
I mean, one's slightly over 1 point a game, one's slightly under 1 point a game, and one draws every checker there is with Ovechkin, and one draws no checkers, or not as many with Malkin. So
and different positions. You're talking Malkin, Crosby, Taves. They're all centers. You're talking
right, and that is a great point, Mike. And that is part of Ovechkin's issue, is that he's not a center, and he does need other people to get him.
Okay.
He does, and he
but he's under a point a game.
100 points a year. When he was getting like 110 points a year or whatever, he was back in like the 2006 era, like in that era, right back then. A lot of that was obviously because the NHL was new and we were still getting used to the two-line pass. But a lot of that also was he was actually going to the puck and getting it more and creating his own opportunities. Like, the thing he's not doing now, he reminds you of a striker in soccer who's waiting for the ball all the time. You have to at some point come back and get the ball. And he waits. He spends a lot of time.
8 points. 8 points. 5 goals in 13 games. 5 goals.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
I know fantasy hockey pool players out there are not too happy with Alex Ovechkin, because they probably spent the most money or the highest draft pick on Alex Ovechkin, and again, he didn't produce. And that's what I'm saying. We don't know what McClellan and Leonsis are going to do going into the summer, but I think if they stand pat, and all they do is let the UFAs walk away and re-sign the guys who are RFAs, I think all they're doing is inviting another disappointment in another postseason. They have to think outside the box. They have to do.
I mean, I agree with you. They're going to put. And Rush, you had a really good point last night in one of the texts too, which is rare. You put out there that particularly the text I just said. But no, I'm just kidding. No, the text was that you said the Capitals couldn't stay with the Penguins, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
And again, it came back to the same problem they had last year. They weren't fast enough, right? This series was a comedy of errors on the Caps. I mean, you had moments where Ovechkin was the problem. You had moments where Holtby was the problem. You had moments where they didn't, they never, the whole thing actually went back to Toronto, the Toronto series too, where the same kind of things were happening, right? So
the Toronto series was not a wake-up call for the Caps. It was a warning sign. That's what it was.
And part of that, I think, is that we're underestimating how good Toronto really can be and is, and played in that series, and they played very well. But the other thing is, that the Penguins just, now I'm going to bring up the C word that I think the difference was right now, and that is confidence. Like that's the
Sure, no, that's a big deal.
The Penguins, like I talked about yesterday, we saw them lose that Game 5 to the Sharks at home with all the pressure on them and all the disappointment, and then just go and roll in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same kind of that team has been through this, and what we saw last night, to transition to the other game, was two teams who have been through this. And that was and know that that there's a regular season level, there's a playoff level, and there's a Game 7 level.
But Kuznetsov had more points in the playoffs than Ovechkin.
Yeah, no, and I know, and you can't stand that guy. Yeah, and no, because he's an absolute jerk. I mean, not to be but he really it's and that's just I'm sorry, but
I found him to be a decent guy. I actually had a long conversations with him. Really, honestly.
Well, I think somebody finally told him to quit with the bird thing because he stopped doing it. I think Barry Trotz probably said.
Yeah, on ice stuff. I mean, I'm not saying as a person he's a jerk, but I'm just saying that, the stuff he does on the ice, I'm not into that. Ovechkin used to get lame for that kind of stuff too. But anyway, but he's a great player. He's obviously an incredible player who had a great playoffs 2 years ago, had a terrible playoffs last year, had another pretty good playoffs this year. But the reality of it is this: when it all is said and done, last night, two teams that have been through this before found a way, where and the Caps have been through it too. They've been there. They've been in this situation, but there's still the Penguins, the confidence level of the Penguins, knowing that they had won a Stanley Cup and could win, showed through in that entire game to me. And then last night, after the first terrible beginning for the Ducks against Anaheim, against Edmonton, the Ducks just totally took over that game.
Well, and I was very happy for Randy Carlisle because I've been of the opinion that when he was coach of the Leafs, he was got more of the blame and shouldn't have, because he had a roster full of, I would say, half-hearted guys with no work ethic or little work ethic, and you can only do so much of turning chicken to chicken salad. He was given the tools in Anaheim. He had two dominant centers of different types of guys in Getzlaf and Kessler, and I think they were the key to that series. Gibson bounced back from the really bad Game 6, had a really good game yesterday. But I mean, honestly, the key to the series, and Edmonton deserves credit because they were one of the worst teams in the league last year. McDavid grew remarkably. Draisaitl is going to be a force in this league. Their defense is a little better. I still think it's weak. Talbot is a number one goaltender, and I think he proved that. But the problem with Edmonton is that they have on their roster from the past few years and added a player like Milan Lucic, the players like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jordan Eberle, who did not show up in the playoffs whatsoever. And when you've got guys like them making a collective $18 million a year, you're not going to win because you allowed Anaheim to shut down McDavid, to limit Draisaitl because that second line could not score goals. So, I mean, I think Peter Chiarelli's got a lot more work to do. That you've got the core players there. You maybe need to improve your defense a little more, but I think you're going to see Nugent-Hopkins or Eberle moved in the summer because I just don't think
you have to. I mean,
it's going to probably be Eberle, and that's what everybody is saying, and that's what I've been hearing for a while too.
But they waited too long. Like either one of them, their value has sunk. They waited way too long.
Yeah, and I'm such a big Eberle fan. Like he's one of all the players and juniors. He was always one of my favorites, and I don't follow that stuff very much.
He can still play the game, but these guys.
Yeah. I expected him to be the guy last night to come. Like I remember Eberle was always the guy who came up for Canada with a big goal. I was expecting that last night. I thought at some point, we always talked about Eberle, and I always said with Eberle, we're not seeing him in a situation that he thrives in, like pressure situation. He's not playing in the playoffs. He's not the guy. And last night in the playoffs, he didn't have it either. But then again, he was playing.
Has a lot of passengers. They do. I saw one good shot out of Benoit Pouliot. I saw one good shot out of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I saw Milan Lucic getting schooled and looking slow. I saw Connor McDavid getting literally shut down. I mean, the only goal was the Drake Caggiula goal, and that was really because he hustled and there was a mistake in front of the net. The only reason. Otherwise, this game was complete domination from the Anaheim Ducks. And look, we know that Edmonton is a young team, but just because we know that they need work defensively, they need work offensively too, because they may be able to get through the regular season with Connor McDavid. But even if Connor McDavid improves and keeps improving every year, you can't win the playoffs with one great guy anymore. And Draisaitl got completely shut down in that game. They figured it out, and he stopped because he was the one who was killing them, and he stopped victimizing them.
I mean, Pittsburgh is proof that you could have the great generational player like Crosby, like Malkin, but you have to have layer upon layer upon layer of talent to be able to maximize the value of those players. That's where teams like Winnipeg, teams like Buffalo, teams like Toronto over the next 2 or 3 years, the focus on the draft and free agency will be imperative for those teams, because you can't rest on your laurels and just depend on Patrick Laine, Jack Eichel, and Austin Matthews to carry your team to the promised land. You have to continue to add young players to those rosters.
The difference was you really felt like last night, the Anaheim-Edmonton game last night felt like a lot like the last game in the Washington-Toronto series. It just felt like when I was watching them play, it really felt like the same game. You had a team that had experience and was obviously better than the other team against a team that has all kinds of talent up front, but no defensemen at all. Like and Anaheim and Edmonton last night, Edmonton has, you would arguably, a better defense, you would say, than Toronto by maybe slightly. Maybe. It's really close. But I mean, that defense for Edmonton last night, really, I mean, you've got they're a team with a whole bunch of great wide receivers and like a B-level quarterback, And that B-level quarterback comes out of the back and doesn't get the ball to the receiver. So McDavid and Draisaitl have to kind of do it themselves. And
When a guy like Sekera, who's one of their top 4 defensemen, gets hurt, and Clefbaum comes back and he clearly wasn't at 100%. You're playing.
That tells you a lot right there, Mike. You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know why. But the thing interesting about it, maybe you can log in real quick if you want, or just see if it clears up.
But here's the thing, too.
Let me bring up Sekera for a second, because Sekera is their most stable defenseman. Okay, and Sekera couldn't make 20 of 30 NHL teams, probably. And that's not it's not knocking. To be, he can maybe make it as a 5 or 6, but we've seen Sekera, he failed in so many different situations. I'm not saying he's a bad defenseman, but he can't be your best defenseman and you expect to do anything like that.
No, he's a defensively challenged defenseman. He's an offenseman. He was that in Buffalo.
Yeah.
To a lesser extent in Carolina. LA acquired him because of the to be more of a puck rusher, and then Edmonton overpaid him.
Yeah, LA couldn't stand him.
Here's the thing. This is what I take out of Edmonton. They need to get some forwards who can play defense, because the problem is, if they replace Eberle with, let's say, Jesse Puljujarvi, he's also defensively deficient.
Yeah.
They need to get a couple of players that could really play lockdown defense from a forward position to basically offset their great skill, because otherwise they're going to lose to some of these teams that have the skill but have the greasiness to beat them and shut them down.
I'm going to throw you a crazy idea that someone threw to me yesterday, and it's a rumor. And I'm going to give it like an E1, which means it's just one person who happens to know something heard this from somebody. So it's not like it could just be someone speculating. Okay. So, but this is fascinating. All right. And that rumor was Jacob Trouba for Puljujarvi. And as I watch this, I'm like, it's an interesting trade, because
I don't think Edmonton will make the trade, though.
Yeah, but they traded Hall for Larson.
I know, but the problem is they had cost certainty with Larson. You don't have cost certainty with Trouba.
No, but you're a defenseman who you're gonna not have cost certainty with. You're gonna have to have one.
You have the attractive possibility of having the twin finished towers of Puljujarvi on line A on the same line. I get that. That would be motivation. But the thing is, from the Edmonton perspective, Trouba's 1 year away from asking for $6 million a year,
and he is going to free agency no matter what.
Right. or he's going to hold out again. He's going to hold Cheveldayoff's feet to the fire this time. He's not going to accept the bridge deal. He wants the long green, and he's going to get it, or he's not going to play for them.
Well, this would be a deal where Edmonton would have to talk to him ahead of time and say, listen, we're able to sign you now because you're in your last year, and they would have to be able to extend him. Here,
okay, and I'm not. This is not a rumor. I'm just putting this out there as knowing Peter Chiarelli. And looking at the Edmonton Oilers, the player that they need right now, and the team that has this player right now will not trade him probably for another 2 years or 3 years until he starts to decline. But the player that they need, that Edmonton needs right now to be the number 2 behind Connor McDavid, is Patrice Bergeron. They need that two-way guy, that leader, the guy who can kill penalties, can score the key playoff goal, can be a secondary offensive guy. They need that player. I don't know if that player is out there, but
isn't Draisaitl essentially that player?
No, I actually think Draisaitl is more of a winger than he is a center, Russ. Do you think he is, or do you think he's a center?
I think he can do either, but the thing is, he doesn't have the defensive chops. He never will, and that's the issue. Basically, there's a kid who got drafted a couple years ago, Tyson Jost, actually last year, right? He is that kind of Bergeron kind of player that plays that kind of game. It's hard to find and identify those players. Most of the time, you're getting that guy in the draft. That's the thing.
Right, but it's gonna take, if you draft somebody like that in the second round this year, it's gonna take a couple years to recognize that you drafted that player or find out that you drafted that player. So, it's possible that they had, that teams already have that type of two-way guy in their organization right now, but that type of player is a key for this time of year, because Bergeron. I know Boston didn't win this year, but it wasn't Bergeron's fault. It was what was surrounding him.
Yeah,
and I don't think Boston's going to trade him for a couple years, because if you trade him, he's their number one center right now, but I think he fits better on a contending team as a number 2.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, I don't know. To me, that's a tough one. I mean, I think if I would rather put that money into a defenseman than Bergeron. I mean, Patrice is really expensive.
Right, and that's probably the way they're going to go because I mean, Kessler is that player for Anaheim. They're paying him almost $7 million a year,
Yep.
but he provides that two-way ability behind Getzlaf, and that paid off this year because he neutralized Monahan in the first round against Calgary, and now he neutralized McDavid in the second round. And I'm sure that Ryan Johansson will have nightmares about Ryan Kessler in the conference final when they play.
That's going to be a blast. We're going to get into the previews for these things tomorrow for sure. But a couple really funny things that happened that I wanted to get on to before we get out of here today. First of all, there was this tweet. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but this came from the Dallas Stars, which was really good. Here it is. So the Stars tweeted this out yesterday, right after the game. It says, Anaheim Ducks, send over that pick. If you remember Patrick Eves, the Patrick Eves trade was, conditional on the Anaheim Ducks getting to the conference finals. And Eves playing at least 50% of the games. So Eves has played 8 of 11, and they are in the conference finals.
But Eves is injured.
He's injured, but I'm very curious about how this would work. Like, I wonder. Oh man, this could really be interesting. I think it had 50% before they got to the conference finals. Is what I think it was.
I think you're right, but it's ironic. I mean, if they're announcing it, then it has to be the case that they got the pick. But if it would have been 50% of the games played, period, and he's injured right now with a lower body injury, and it's supposedly not like season ending, but how you might like want to keep him out of the lineup so you don't give up a first round pick.
Can I tell you, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that tweet. Why does it have to be like a one-up situation on social media, like a little dig? Like, I don't get it.
I think it's fun. I mean, I don't get it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they made the trade. That's the trade, and that's
right. But I'm just saying. But there's been plenty of trades over the years. Like, just imagine if social media were around when Tuukka Rask got traded, and the Boston Bruins sent back, like a picture of the Stanley Cup and they tweeted that to the Leafs after they won the Stanley Cup, even though it was Tim Thomas, right? I mean, you get stuff like that. It's like, come on.
But this is a little more like, obscure because it's just a pick. You don't know who it is going to be. It's not like it's not really – to me, that was more of like, okay, Tuukka Rask, helped them win the Stanley Cup. This is a situation where, I don't know. I can see what you're saying. But,
I'm just saying, I just think it's fun to have fun on Twitter, but with little inner workings of the NHL like that, don't do it because you know what's going to happen? You're going to end up getting burned down the line. That's what ends up happening. When you end up being that I don't want to use the word braggadocious because it sounds old, but when you do brag like that, a lot of times it comes back on you.
Sure.
Right. I can see that. All right, here's another fun thing, though, for Russ, if you like to have fun, Russ.
No, I like having fun. Shut up.
That's a nice. I understand. You'll see if you think of this. We'll see if this passes the Russ fun meter or not. Okay. Here we go. So Brizgalov, if you remember, had sent out a tweet earlier in this week. Looks like the Caps are going to advance to the conference finals. This is after the Caps won Game 6. Malkin, and that is believe it or not Malkin, which is like I don't know how you could possibly that's just
it's Cyrillic. So go ahead.
That is Malkin. Sends to both Briz Goalie 30 and Briz Goalie 30. This could be a drunk tweet, but who knows? He sent it twice to Brizgalov to make sure he got it. I want to invite you to the conference finals in Pittsburgh.
I like it. I like it.
So this is fun.
And I'll tell you why I like it.
All right.
Because Brizgalov is a dope for posting that before the series was ever over. He gets what he gets.
Yeah. I mean, just the fun parts of this. The most fun to me is the fact that they did it in English. Like,
right.
like they went back and forth in English to just
so we could all see it.
So everybody could enjoy it. That's the funny thing about that, I thought.
It's just a little note here. Kuznetsov and Orlov are heading to the World Championships to play for Russia. Alex Ovechkin finished the playoffs playing through a lower body injury and will not go to the World Championship. So what Stephen Wino from Associated Press is reporting is that he had a lower body injury that occurred in the Toronto series when Kadri hit him, and was taking pain-reducing injections to play. So there's your excuse.
No, that's legit. I mean, that's not.
No. I know, but
Erik Karlsson's playing with a bad injury too. Everybody plays injured.
Right.
No
exactly.
No.
Yeah. I know. All right. Well, that's fine. Yakupov has said he has zero plans of returning to Russia. He fully expects to play in the NHL next year. So for what it's worth, I didn't think.
I think you were right, Eck. I think you were right. He's going to go. He could be a Vegas guy.
Yeah. I applaud the kid. I still don't think teams have used him correctly. Hitchcock trades for him and then buries him. Like, it was just, listen, he needs to play on a team where he could get minutes and get minutes on the power play, or you are wasting your time with him. I've seen people on Twitter writing that he's a bust and sort of joking about it. I like this kid's at least stick-to-itiveness. I do.
Put him on the number one line in Vegas with Shipachyov as his center, and I will bet you anything he'll score over 20 goals next year.
Yep.
And this is fun too. I think Russ will tell you. Can tell me. This is all right. So
the fun police, Russ Cohen.
Right. The Joe Louis Arena is done as far as events go for hockey, or might be good for everything. I don't know, but they allowed people, and I'm not sure who they allowed to do this, but I saw it, to get in there and paint on the ice. They painted
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that. That's fantastic.
On there, they went in, a bunch of people painted. You can actually look it up and zoom in on things. It's pretty cool. It's like, there's an octopus over here. There's Mr. I written there by somebody. It's good stuff. I mean, in general, this is, I guess maybe that Mr. I was on the ice, but I'm not sure.
I love it.
But yeah, this is really, really good stuff, and I think that's kind of fun, and it is.
That's gonna be a heck of a cleanup job, though.
Oh, they're just gonna
They just break it up.
I know.
I think they're just demolishing.
No, this was a cool idea. It was great.
The 2 out of 3 pass rushes.
I have fun, Eck. I do.
Richard Panik's been signed to a 2-year contract extension.
Well, forget about this. We have a bigger story that you're burying the lead on for the expansion draft. Pierre LeBrun.
I know. I wanted to talk about that, but I wanted to give it more of a time. But we should get into it for the last 10 minutes here for sure.
We should. It's really worthy of talking about.
Okay, so yesterday, and I've been a big proponent of the fact that I think that the NHL is giving Vegas too many benefits here. Okay, so I'm throwing that out there like off the bat. I mean, this is, first of all, being the only expansion team and not having 2 expansion teams is a huge benefit in and of itself. But beyond that,
they're creating a reality show is what they're doing.
Beyond that, they're making this totally confusing. But you know what? I couldn't thank them enough because this is going to be great for business. So I'm okay with it all. But all right. But here we go. This was sent out by Pierre LeBrun yesterday of TSN, and it is totally crazy. I said something else actually was edited by my editors. I said it was cap chip crazy, but they changed it to truly. All right, here we go. Team X, and we all know Team X. They were when I was a kid. I had a Team X jersey. Could offer Vegas an asset in exchange for signing a pending UFA from another team during that unique window. This is when Vegas has the ability to get the first shot at any UFA. So basically, let me read that again. Team X, so let's say the Toronto Maple Leafs, could offer Vegas an asset in exchange for signing a pending UFA from a team during that unique period.
Well, signing be like your personal shopper.
Signing a pending UFA or selecting one in the expansion.
Signing. Okay.
They can also select a pending UFA.
Well, of course they can, but we knew that. This part we didn't know.
But there's no really reason to select for them. There's no real reason to select a pending UFA because they can sign them. So because they have the ability to sign players before anybody else has the ability to sign players. All right. I think it's a 3-day period or something like that.
And RFAs as well if they haven't been qualified. So that's
a big deal because a lot of times you don't see RFAs qualified at that point. All right.
Right.
Then Vegas would flip that signed player to Team X. Okay, so they could sign that player. Mm-hmm. So let's throw a player out there like let's just say
a UFA
there's hundreds of them.
Justin Williams. Use Justin Williams.
TJ Oshie. All right, they signed TJ because he's going to be one of the biggest UFAs this summer. All right, so they signed TJ Oshie. They could then trade that player back to Washington. They could trade Oshie back to Washington. All right. But the key to this is that Vegas must wait until after the expansion draft to flip the signed player back.
Correct.
That's because any signed free agent during the unique window counts as one of Vegas roster's picks for the expansion draft. All right, so understand that. So that counts as a Vegas pick for the expansion draft.
Right.
And that might be worth the asset for Vegas as it counts as an expansion draft pick from any team that doesn't have much to select from to begin with. So this is
I'll tell you who this really screws up are the trading card companies, because Upper Deck will have a card of, let's say, TJ Oshie as a Vegas guy, and then have to immediately update it to go back to whatever team he gets flipped to under this scenario, like an Eli Manning Chargers card.
So they'll just put out a traded set later in the year.
Yeah, so essentially what this is saying is, okay, you don't have anybody we like. All right, you don't have anybody we really want on your team that's unprotected. But you want to sign Oshie, right? You're going to sign Oshie anyway. So if they're going to sign Oshie anyway, what do you want to sign Oshie for? Okay, here's how much you want to sign him for. Okay, we're going to sign him for that. Give him back to you. Not take anyone from your roster, and you're going to give us a second round pick for it.
Well, right. This is the thing. I don't think it's going to be signing a guy like Oshie, because if Oshie signs a free agent contract, he's going to be signing a contract with a no move or a no trade, or he's a big free agent. He's going to get that kind of limitation. But if we're talking about the Vegas in the expansion draft selecting Oshie as their selection, that gives a team who actually is interested in him, and let's use Chicago for an example. They select him, they trade his rights to Chicago for a draft pick. Chicago gets a window of 3 or 4 days to negotiate exclusively with Oshie before that 5-day window when everybody in the league can negotiate. That's the advantage here. I think this is basically the publisher's clearinghouse approach to the NHL expansion draft.
I think Vegas will own the goalie market.
Yes.
You're smart.
Very confusing about this.
Think about this. Think about this, Zach, while you're thinking about that. You could own the goalie market. You could pick up Steve Mason. You could pick up 4 or 5 other goalies in the expansion draft, and there are going to be teams that have to deal with you because they have to sign a goalie.
Right. Yeah, but I don't think the goalie market is as good as we think to make that. I mean, that's like buying, we're buying in zinc. It's not like a big. I don't think it's a great market. It's not like we have like 16. I mean, often the goalie market kind of works itself out naturally, which is what it's already kind of.
Yeah, but I don't think this year it will.
Well, for a team like Toronto who might be looking for a backup goaltender,
correct.
The easier way for them to manipulate things might be Vegas picks up a backup goaltender, and then they trade one of their extra forwards for the backup goalie, and then Vegas selects a guy like Eric Fehr as the expansion pick. It's sort of part of the deal. We'll give you a young forward for a backup goaltender that we need, and in exchange, you take the guy who you're probably going to take anyway, which is one of George McPhee's former first-round picks, in Eric Fehr.
Yeah, I think they can do that a couple times over. I do.
Yeah, well, this doesn't mean a couple things. It's something that I really didn't realize before right away. So this doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to take a player off of Team X's team. Like this means that they can just counts as an expansion draft
pick. It's a pick.
So it can be anybody they don't want to take a player from. So they can still take a player from that other team.
It can be anybody, yes.
It's just that they have 30 expansion picks. Right?
I mean, the only danger to Vegas here is if they're doing this without the preamble of talking to another general manager. Like if they go out and take some pending for, like, say, Steve Mason with like 8 days before he's unrestricted, and they're just doing it to sort of shop him around for that 3 or 4 days. Right. Then they could be left holding the bag.
Right, but he's not. McPhee's smarter than that.
Right, exactly. He's gonna be talking to a number of general managers from now until the middle of June, plotting out what he's going to do. And then he's going to make. I mean, I'm telling you, the reason that the NHL is going to be keeping track of all these little side deals is because if they didn't, there would be such an opportunity for either McPhee or another general manager to screw each other. That's why they really have to track it.
There's still the opportunity for them to do that, and that's what I've talked to GMs who are like, we are going to get screwed. They don't doubt it, and they're not blaming McPhee for it. They're like, the way this sets up they're setting it up for McPhee to be like, the only thing that would be more fun is if Lou.
No, but I think Mike's talking about a double cross. Like, you're making a deal saying don't pick Antti Ranta, and we'll give you Matt Pumple, and then all of a sudden you pick Antti Ranta. That's what I think he's talking about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's possible. I mean, I don't think that's McPhee. Like, that's not. I don't think McPhee would do that. But I think that. I mean, that's possible. But I think there's more.
If it was Kevin Lowe, he would, right?
Right.
The only thing that sucks about this that is not like Lou Lamoriello making these picks, because if it was Lou Lamoriello making these picks, all bets would be off. This would be amazing. I mean, or Brian Burke. Like if Brian.
Oh my God. Brian Burke would literally be on the television from now until the expansion draft every day.
Are there any vacant barns in the Vegas area?
Like he would be telling everybody exactly what he's not going to do. He would be lying to everybody on the air.
Right.
And just to purposely kind of like get like, so McPhee's a lot more,
circumspect
than that, so yeah, that's a good word for it. But he's a little more serious. So I think that McPhee's not going to do that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this never happens. And I'll tell you why.
No, wait. Isn't Michael Raffalo UFA?
Yes.
Okay. He is the perfect guy to do this with so the Flyers can get him back. The perfect guy. Because the Flyers need him.
I mean, we know that there's a rule for a player being bought out not being traded back to an organization.
What this is saying, Mike, is that doesn't count in this situation. And I thought that's what I think everybody that's what I think everybody expected that wouldn't be allowed, because that's exactly why that he wrote this, I believe, because that is the only thing that is weird about this. Like, otherwise you can see all this makes sense, but what is weird about this is the fact that, there is that rule that you can't do an offer sheet for a guy and send him back. You can't do that. There's certain things you can't do. So this is definitely the case where so Raffle, what's the real benefit? So what are the Flyers willing to give up for Michael Raffle?
Right. Let's just say McPhee calls up Hextall and says, I'm going to take Raffle if you don't protect him. And Hextall's thinking, boy, I wasn't planning on protecting him. Let me give you, and let's say it's Robert Hogg.
Okay.
Or Lawton or somebody like that.
Or Scott Lawton. Yeah.
But then he's telling you sign Raffle.
You sign Raffle. I'll tell you exactly what to sign him for. They're going to call the agent because they know what they're going to sign him for market value. They're going to give him market value, and then they're going to trade him back.
But doesn't the player have to be involved in this? Because maybe.
Yeah, sure. The player says says this is what we're doing. It's all set up. The Flyers are getting you back, but they're just doing it. So it's okay. But here's the question: since you can't really technically announce this before the expansion draft happens itself,
right?
So you could actually. Say, okay, suddenly you don't get something. Somebody else backs out on a deal on McPhee, and now suddenly he's got Raffle, and he's like, I'm keeping him. That's where this could get. That's why the transaction has to be reported to the NHL, because if you have a quid pro quo here where you're saying I'm going to take Raffle, but I'm going to trade him back to you, you have to tell the league that you're trading Raffle back to Philadelphia, and if you back out on that, then all of a sudden. I mean, that's a double cross. Enforceable is that? It's something that there does feel like there could be potential for, but I don't think this is going to happen. The reason I don't think this is going to happen is because I think that if you could have just taken say Robert Hagg or something like that, you could have just taken him in the first place.
Well, I think what's going to happen more often, Eck, is teams are going to make trades.
Yes.
I'll use Toronto as an example. Toronto will say, I will trade you Josh Levo for future considerations,
right.
And if you take Eric Fair as the waiver claim, as the expansion claim,
right?
So that they can then expose players that they normally wouldn't expose because they know that Vegas won't take them.
Right. Well, if Vegas is going to take Fair, it doesn't matter who you expose.
Well, no, but you're eliminating doubt. Plus, I think Vegas is in a perspective here where they don't need to just add 30 players. They need to add probably 45 players. So they're going to be looking to make deals where they get extra bodies. They may take Fair, but they want another guy. And if they work things the right way,
and like the Lawton thing, they might say, "Hey, we didn't want Lawton, but we'll take Lawton and a second round pick."
Right.
Right, and they're going to need they're going to need more than draft picks out of this, though. Like
right, they need bodies. That's why I'm saying.
Well,
It's
no,
like,
but
not
I mean,
just
it
draft
depends.
picks.
It depends. Yeah, they might need bodies too. It's true.
I mean, they have to get, like, they're getting 30 players, like you said. They really need at least 60. So they're going.
Well, they can sign free agents, and they can
Right.
add guys by qualifying them. But I think
Yeah.
that they're going to have to make these deals where they get two for the price of one, and that's where the skill of making trades is going to happen.
Right. And yeah, I mean, they're going to have, and all this is said and done. I mean, I got to go, but I think that you're going to see a pretty good Vegas team. I don't think they're going to be terrible.
It's going to be a terrible team.
I don't think so.
Terrible
team.
We'll see. I'm not saying they're making the playoffs, of course, but I'm sitting there and saying, are they going to be able to compete?
We will, on the show, we will bet on how many wins they
That's
get.
what I want to know. But we are going to wait till we'll see what they have.
We're gonna wait to see what they have.
Yeah.
We're gonna put up how many wins they're gonna get, and we're gonna push money. We're gonna Venmo each other money if we have to at the end of it. But and that's how we're gonna do it.
I may have to pay for you. Pay that in, like, drink a toast or something. Anyway, all right. So here we go. That's all the time we have for today, guys. Remember, we thank you so much. Actually, there's been a huge influx of you guys listening to us on iTunes, which is really wonderful. Thanks. Keep spreading that around. We've, like, doubled our viewership in the last couple of weeks. Keep that going, guys. We really appreciate it. And go to patreon.com/hockey and help us out there. And we'll talk to you soon. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Tomorrow we'll be back with all of our predictions and we'll talk about how bad we did last round, too.
I did well. I'm not worried.
For the conference finals. I did okay, I guess. Talk to you then. Good night. Good hockey.